Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about Dockerizing Next.js and deploying it to a VPS. So we're going to look at the latest Next.js. For this, it's Next.js version 16 at the time of recording. We can deploy Next.js in multiple ways. So they actually have an overview here on the Next.js website, but you can see one of those options is actually with a Docker container. If I click on that, they have a short description here where they mention Docker deployments support all Next.js features. And they also mention that while Docker is excellent for production deployments, they do mention just using a local development server, npm run dev, for local development. All right, so I'm going to use the latest Next.js 16, and actually it has a different minimum Node.js version. So in a previous video of mine, we actually deployed Next.js with Coolify. I was using the latest Next.js 16, and by default on Coolify it was using an older Node.js version, so we actually ran into an issue there. However, we were still able to fix it by just increasing the Node.js version that was used, right? So it's good to know about that. Now, if you scroll down here, you will see some templates that they have prepared for you. So if you click on the first one there, they have a repo here with a Docker file. So here they have an example Docker file here. So we'll talk about this in a second. Now we need some Next.js app to actually Dockerize. So I have a Next.js application here. It's very simple, but it does use the Next.js image component. It uses a server action. If I click on that, we actually get a result back from the server action. I also have a route handler here. And if I click on this button, I get a message from the route handler, right? So it's full stack, both client side and server side is in here. I also have some navigation. So if I go to /test, we have a different page, right? So just some basic link navigation. So I want to Dockerize this Next.js application, and ultimately I want to run it in production on a VPS. Now on the VPS, we'll also talk about adding a custom domain, as well as adding a CDN in front with Cloudflare and adding HTTPS, so more production-like setup on the VPS as well. How do I go about doing this? So I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So the first option that you have that I'm going to show you is to create a Docker image out of your application here on your own computer first. So this Docker image will contain everything that is necessary to run this Next.js app. Right, so a Docker image is basically like a package that contains all the dependencies, all the things that it needs to run. And then we can move that to the VPS and run it on the VPS. And so I'll show you that first. The second option that you have is if you use a VPS provider that can build that Docker image for you, then you don't even need to build it yourself anymore. They will do it for you. So that's why I'm going to use Hostinger in this video. Yes, they are sponsoring, but they have a great tool here called the Docker Manager, which means we do not have to build a Docker image locally. They will build it for you. So I'll show you that as the second option. Okay, but let's start by building a Docker image out of our application here. Right, so I have my Next.js application here, Next.js 16 here, package.json. You can see it's version 16. You just saw how it works, right? So we have a page, home page, we have a server action, we have a route handler, and we have a different page here as well with navigation. On the home page, I'm also using that Next.js image component. So now I need to create a Docker image out of this. If you search for Next.js Docker, you will find this article here, and here there's an option for Docker container. Now, if you go to their templates, the first one here will be a repo here on GitHub that is an example Next.js app with a Dockerfile. So if I open up the Dockerfile, this is a so-called Dockerfile. So we can just copy that, and I'm going to create a new Dockerfile here, uppercase Dockerfile, and just paste all of that in here. So this will allow us to create an image, Docker image out of our Next.js app. It describes what it needs, what to copy into that image, and there are perhaps ways that you can change this and fine-tune it to fit your needs. I will just leave it as this example though. So basically you can see it's pulling in Node.js as like a base image, right? Because Next.js needs Node.js to run, right? So it's using a particular version. It's going to install dependencies, right? Because our Next.js app needs other dependencies, right? It's going to run a build to create an optimized version. It's going to set the node environment variable to production. It's going to copy things from the public folder, right? Some assets that we may have, like images or PDF files, and it's going to expose a port on number 3000. So you can change this, but I will leave it for now. There is another file in that repo called dockerignore. I will also copy this, and I will create .dockerignore, and I'll paste this right here, because remember, it's going to copy over some things into that image, and we do not want to copy some things in there, like, so we can ignore these things. All right, now I'm going to use Docker desktop here to manage all of this. So if you have not installed this yet, go ahead and install this. If you search for Docker Desktop, you'll find it on the Docker website. Right, I'm on Mac, so I just had to install this, but you can pick the right option for you. All right, now once you've installed Docker Desktop, you will see this. So I have my images here. So right now I don't have anything here. So what we want to do is create an image out of our Next.js app, right? So it will appear here. And then an actual instance of that, when we actually run it, that's called a container. Okay, but first we need to have an actual blueprint or like package to create instances out of. So now let's actually create a Docker image. We can do it in two ways. So the first way is to do it in the terminal. So you can run a terminal command. So what I wrote here is docker build, right? So build an image. How does it know what to, like, where are the instructions for building that? Well, I have a period here, which means in this directory, there will be a Docker file. So from this Docker file, here are the instructions to create an image. Now I have provided two options here. I have this platform Linux AMD 64. This may be necessary if you're on MacBook. So I'm on MacBook, and if I want to use this image on a VPS, those are typically going to be using Linux AMD 64 chips. However, on MacBook, I have a different chip. So in that case, you may want to specify that option. I have another option here, basically to give it a tag or name. And I'm deliberate about this. So I'm calling it I'm calling it ghcr.io. This is the GitHub container registry. So in this example, we're first going to push this image to GitHub containers registry. And then from the VPS, we're going to pull it from that registry. So that's why I'm giving it this name. And this is my GitHub name. So I'm calling it, so it's my GitHub name here. And then I can just give it any name. So I'm calling it Next16 Docker for the actual image name. And then I'm giving like a version. Instead of doing this terminal command, we could also create a docker-compose file. This can be useful if you have other things besides the Next.js app as well, like a database or other services that you want to run together, basically. I'll show you that a bit later. Let's go ahead with this example first. I'm going to press enter here, and it's going to create a Docker image out of this. This may take a few minutes because it's going to pull everything together into one big package, you could say, so that we can run the Next.js app everywhere we want. All right, so after a few minutes, my Docker image has been created. Where can I see that? You can see it here in the Docker desktop application. You can see I now have one image here with that name I gave it. If we actually want to run our Next.js app, we can, from this image, we can click on run here. So this will create an actual instance or what's called a container. And we have some options here. You can give it a name. Now internally, that Next.js app, remember it's typically running on port 3000. That will be internally in the container. If we want to access it still on localhost 3000 on our computer outside the container, I can add this here, and we have some other options here, but I will just click on run. Okay, so now you can see the familiar Next.js logging. If I now go to localhost 3000, you can see I have my Next.js app right here. Everything is still working. However, this is using that Docker image, right? So this is the Dockerized application running locally on my own computer now. But now we actually will talk about getting this to run on a VPS. So I will go ahead and delete this, but I still have my image right here. All right, so I want to get that image onto the VPS. Now I'm first going to put it on the GitHub container registry here under packages. This is also something you see for npm packages. So, and then from the VPS, we will pull it from here. This is not the only way of doing it, but I find it a bit easier to do it this way. So I would need to push it to this GitHub container registry. So if I go to my terminal here again, start pushing things, I first need to authenticate myself with that container registry. So I can say docker login, and which registry was GitHub container registry.io. I need to provide my username. This is my username on GitHub. And then it asks me for a password. I'm going to create a personal access token to get access. So it's very easily created here in settings. If I scroll down here to developer settings, there is an option here for personal access tokens. I actually like the classic tokens. So I will click on generate new token for the classic way. I will call it tutorial. I like a short expiration date, and here we can pick the scopes. So what does somebody with this token get access to? Well, it's this packages scope, right? So here, right? So that is what I need, nothing else. So I will just go ahead and generate this. Now make sure you don't show it to anyone else. I will delete it after recording the video, but you may want to store it somewhere because later from the VPS, we also need to log in so we can actually get access. So for the time being, I will actually just put it in a .env file here. Okay, you can copy that and paste that right here, and then it should work. So I went ahead and logged in. All right, so now we can push to that registry. So we can say docker push And which image? Well, it's this one that we just created. So you need to get the name here. If you double click on it, you will see the name right here. So let me copy this and let's see if this works. All right, so it's gonna try pushing to the registry and that looks good. Now, if I go to my profile and I go to packages, if I scroll all the way down, you can see I have Next.16 Docker. So now it's time to pick a VPS. Now, like I said, I'm going to use Hostinger. They're sponsoring today's video, but I had a great time using them. They actually have an amazing Black Friday sale as of recording. So check out the link in the description. Now, why go with Hostinger? Well, I had a great time using them, but they actually have an amazing new feature here called the Docker Manager. I will show you how to use this in a bit. We can use Docker Compose, but basically with this option, you don't even have to build the Docker image locally yourself first. We can actually just provide a Docker Compose file and we just give that file to Hostinger and Hostinger will create the Docker containers on the VPS for us. Really powerful. And it makes deploying with Docker even easier on their VPS. So I think this is a real good reason to go with their VPS. Now, if we take a look at their pricing here, so I'm going to go with the KVM2 plan. I've used it many times. I've always had a good experience. But if you already anticipate that you'll need a little bit more power, go ahead and pick one of these more powerful plans. Now, I'm going to go with this one in the video. Now, on the checkout page, there is an option here for coupon codes. Make sure to use my coupon code, which is all uppercase bytegrad. If we apply it, you will see that we can get an even better price. So look at this price, really amazing for what you get. Check out the link in the description and make sure to use my coupon code all uppercase bytegrad. Now you also have an option here for daily auto backup. We can pick the server location. Now here we have the select operating system. If you search for Docker here, they already have a template here out of the box for Docker. So I will just confirm this. So if you pick that one, you don't have to manually install that. All right, so let's actually check out. All right, after checkout, we can pick a password for the VPS. It's good to pick a password that you'll remember. All right, I'll click on next here. I'll just go with the default options here. And now it's going to provision the resources for me. This may just take a few minutes. All right, and after a few minutes, it is ready to go. Let's go to Manage VPS. And when you go there, you will see the dashboard here in Hostinger for your VPS that you just purchased. So you can see here it's an Ubuntu operating system and we have some options here for the VPS itself, but it has come with an application here called Docker. Okay, so I will show you more about this in a bit later as well because they have Docker Manager, really amazing. We do not have to build our Docker image locally. We can just add the URL to the Docker Compose file and it will build it for us here. But I'll show you that after because maybe you do want to build it locally or in your own pipeline. What next? If you have your image on the container registry, how do we get it on here? So we can SSH into our VPS, but they also have a terminal here. So if you go to the terminal, we have a terminal in here as well. So maybe you prefer using that, or maybe you do prefer running your own terminal. So here I have my own terminal here. On my MacBook, on Windows, you have PowerShell, and we can log into the VPS from here as well. We just have to do SSH root and then the IP of the VPS. So it will ask me something about a fingerprint. I will say yes. And now it's a password. So here we need to add the password that we just used to set up the VPS. All right. And once you do that, you should be logged in here. Let me clear this out. This is a VPS template that comes with Docker out of the box. So if I type docker-v, you can see Docker is already installed because I see a version here. If you do not see that, if you see an error, then Docker is probably not installed. Now, another thing to check is to run a simple image here called hello world. This is an image, this is a Docker image that Docker actually provides to quickly check if everything works. So if I do docker run hello world, it will not be able to find it locally. So it will actually download it onto the VPS and then it will immediately run the image as well, basically create a container out of it. And now you can see hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. So that is good news. I can clear this out. I can do Docker images to show all the Docker images on this VPS. So right now we only have this hello world that we just did. Now, of course, we want to use our own Next.js Docker image. So just like before, we can log into that registry. So we can say Docker login, which registry, it's ghcr.io. I need to use my bytegrad GitHub name, and then it's that personal access token. So not the VPS password. This is that token that we just set up. Okay, so I will paste it right there. Okay, so now I'm logged in. So now we can pull the image. So I can say docker pull, and we need to use the same name as before. So it's that full name. So I will actually just copy this from Docker desktop again, and I will paste that right here. So let's see if this works. All right, so you can see it's pulling the image. Right, it can be pretty substantial in size because it has everything that our Next.js app needs to run. All right, so now if I clear this out and run Docker images, we can see that we have 2 images here, including our own Docker image. So now I actually want to run it on the VPS. So that we have Docker run. Now, when I run it, I also want to get back. Now I can add -d here. So when the container actually runs, I can sort of run it in the background. So I get back control over my terminal here. And then for the ports, I want to be able to access it on port 3000 outside the container. That's why I have 3000, but it should map to internally in the container to port 3000 because that's where the next app will be running. Okay, and which image do we want to run? Well, it's this one. So I will just use this name again and let's see what we get. All right, so you can see we get some identifier here, but it should be running now. So if I do docker ps, it will show me the running containers. So you can see there is one here that the text wraps, but you can see there's one container here, and that is based on that image that based on our image. So now how can I see this? Well, here in the hostinger's VPS, well, we can use the IP address here from the hostinger VPS. And remember, it's port 3000. So if we go there, well, we have not set up HTTPS yet, so you may get an issue here. But if we continue, we can see that we now have our Next.js application running on a VPS. And now let's see if it still works. So if I invoke a server action, that still works. If I invoke the route handler, it also still works. If I go to the test page, you can see navigation here works as well. The Next.js image component works here as well. So everything seems to be working. So really cool. And we have all the settings here for our VPS. Ideally, of course, we also have a custom domain name so the users don't have to type in this series of numbers. And ideally, we can also add a CDN in front. So for example, the static assets can be served really fast. So how can we make this a more production-like environment? Before we do that, I want to show you the other way that we can deploy a Docker app here on Hostinger's VPS, which is with their new Docker manager. This is really amazing because it means that we do not have to build our Docker image locally ourselves and then sort of awkwardly first move it to some registry and then pull it onto the VPS with a bunch of terminal commands. Instead, we can just provide it with a docker-compose file and Hostinger will take care of everything else. It's really slick. So let's check out that method of deploying a Docker app here. So I will actually reset the VPS here just to start from a clean slate here. So I can go to OS and panel here, operating system. So here we have what we currently have. So this is what I use just to experiment here. But if you have important data, you want to back that up first. Let's go ahead and reinstall here. Provide my VPS password and I will click on confirm. All right, so it's now recreating my VPS. This may take a few minutes. All right, so let's talk about the alternative that you have in terms of Dockerizing Next.js and deploying it. So previously we had only one Docker file, and to create an image out of this, we ran a terminal command, right? So this is the first option. The second option is to manage this with docker-compose. This is helpful, especially if you have multiple services. So a database, for example, or like Traefik, like a reverse proxy, other services. It makes it easier to orchestrate essentially your setup. So let's actually see how that would work. So I can add docker-compose here, and it's a YAML file, so it's YML. And then in here you describe what you want to set up. So in this case, we have one web service. This is going to be our Next.js app. The Docker image should be built from this Docker file. So we will still have the instructions for creating this one Docker image out of this in here. It's just that we sort of orchestrated from docker-compose now. So the build will still happen from this Docker file. And what are the ports that we want to use? Well, let's just start with localhost 3000 on our computer should map to the port 3000 inside the container. We have some environment variables and a restart option here. So now you can see my IDE already allows me to run it, but let's actually use a terminal command for that. And so now let's actually try it locally here. So I can actually just run all services. My IDE gives me this option. And actually you can also run it. You can run it in your own terminal command as well. So it's docker-compose up, and then you can specify some options if you want. So now it's going to create a Docker image again, because that is what we specified. You can see you saw the output there. Okay, so now if I now go to localhost 3000 on my computer, you can see here we have our app again. Everything here is still working. This is one way of doing it. If I go to Docker desktop, you can see I actually have two images now. right? And now I could add a database here or other services, but we want to deploy it to a VPS. Now, the cool thing is with Hostinger, if you have the VPS and you have Docker here, they have Docker Manager. So the only thing we have to provide is actually this Docker Compose file. So I don't have to build Docker images on my own computer first, right? So now I have two, as you can see. I can actually go ahead and delete those. So let me actually delete them. Actually you have to delete the containers first, and then I can delete this one as well. So now I have no Docker images on my own computer. I'm just going to push my code to GitHub, right? So you may already have a repository. Now it will work with private repos as well, but let me actually start off by showing you how it works with public repos. It's a bit easier. Be careful because other people can see your code with a public repo. Push to GitHub here. Okay, so now I pasted everything, and now if we refresh here, this is my repo here on GitHub, including the Docker file and the Docker Compose file right here. So I have my Docker Compose file here. So now I can go to Docker Manager on my VPS. Now here I can compose from URL. So I just have to specify the URL of the Docker Compose file. So if I just go here and copy this and paste this right here, here we have a project. It will automatically pre-fill the project name. Then I can click on deploy, and it will actually deploy my project for me. So we just have to wait a few seconds. All right, and after a few seconds, it is finished, and this is what I see now. So it has one Docker container running here. If I open this up, I have my Next.js. All right, and after a few seconds, it is finished creating a Docker container here. Now we can actually go there directly. If I go there, you can see my application here right on the VPS, right? And actually, let's try it out. Everything here is still working. If I go to test page, I can still navigate. The image component still working. And so this container is running based on an image, not the one that I actually pushed first to a registry and then onto the VPS. I only had to provide this Docker Compose file, and it was able to go from there. So if we click on manage here, you will see some options here, including a visual editor. So there is one container here in this project, right? So it has specified a port here. How does it know that? That's what we specify here in the Docker Compose file, right? There is the actual YAML file here in here as well. So if you want to change this, I could do it from here, right? So we will actually change it in a bit. I can see the logs here as well. So you can see right now there is Next.js running here on localhost 3000 inside the container. Okay, so this is a much easier way to get a Docker-based application up and running on a VPS. So well done to the Hostinger team. All right, so we ideally also can have a custom domain and HTTPS and a CDN in front. So let's see how we can do something like that. So once you have your Docker application actually running on the VPS, how can we point a custom domain at this? So you need to go to your DNS setting for your domain. Now Hostinger actually provides domains as well. So I will use my domain here. Let me actually go here for DNS. So I need to point an A record to the IP of the VPS. So the IP of the VPS is right this one, and I just point this A record at it. I will add the record here. So I do not add a port here, right? It's just the IP of the VPS. So now if I try using the domain, it will not work yet. Okay, so it's just going to point at the VPS IP address, but you can see nothing happening here. Now, if you add port 3000 to it, but here for me in Chrome, it seems to be acting up a bit. However, if I try to use Safari and I go to bytegradecourses.com/3000, I actually do see the application here and everything works here. So now we have a custom domain, but it's using the weird port 3000. Now we can fix this here. However, I also want to show you that a chatbot here is actually helpful. If I start a new chat here and I ask this my VPS here, so I can just talk about what I did, and it may make suggestions here on what I need to change here in the YAML. So I can ask it to check the YAML file, to check the YAML code here. So it's actually able to see the configuration here. So it suggests changing it to port 80. That's a standard port here for HTTP, right? So I can try changing this to port 80 mapping to 30. So if we do that and then deploy again. All right, so project is deployed. Now you can see the container is running like this. So everything here is still working. Now if I use my custom domain, bytegradecourses.com, it for some reason still does not work in Chrome here for me. All right, now if I close everything in Chrome and just restart the browser and then go to bytecradcourses.com, it actually works for me here now as well. Cool. So now I have a custom domain pointing at my VPS that is running Next.js in a Docker container. You can create a Docker image yourself, or you can use Hostinger's Docker Manager, really slick experience. So this is already really cool, but of course we also want to have HTTPS and a CDN. So for the HTTPS, let's ask the chatbot again. You can also ask ChatGPT or other AI solutions, but let's say I want to add HTTPS to this container as well. What should I change? Yeah, it's nice that it's integrated here and that it can immediately read the content here. So it actually suggests adding something here to the Docker Compose file to include a reverse proxy containers like Caddy or Nginx or Traefik actually. All right, so it has given me a suggestion here on how to a reverse proxy, as it's called, so that we can add HTTPS. There's probably ways to fine tune this or make it better, but so you can add your own email here. Yeah, let's just go ahead and try this out. So make sure that you verify that it does what you want. Right, I'm just experimenting here, but if it's a serious project, of course you want to double check everything. I will just go ahead and deploy here. All right, so after a few seconds, we can see we now have 2 containers here in this project. So we have our own, we have the actual Next.js app, but now also this reverse proxy in front. Remember, the custom domain is still pointing to this VPS. If I go to bytecrad courses now, you can see I have HTTPS. Cool. So now if I click everything still works. So now we have custom domain with HTTPS. Now, if it's not working for you in Chrome, I find you try opening up a new window here or closing all windows and create a new instance of Chrome, because I think there may be some caching. I don't know exactly why. Sometimes it doesn't seem to work, or maybe try a new browser like Safari or Firefox, but that's how I got it to work. All right, so now we want to add a CDN in front as well. I'm going to use Cloudflare for that. So Hostinger actually has their own CDN as well, but they mention it's not available on VPS. So they do point to Cloudflare as an alternative here. So this is not a strange setup. This is actually something they point towards. So here in the Cloudflare dashboard, I can add a new domain. So I will just add bytecradcourses.com. It will do a quick scan of the DNS records. They actually have an option here for AI crawlers. I do not want to block them. I will just continue here. And I will go with the free plan here. It will give me DDoS. It will give me some DDoS protection, a global CDN, and many other things here as well. So I will just go with that. All right, so now we need to actually update the name server. So we need to go into our DNS provider. For me, that is Hostinger, and they have some guides for that. So, but I will just show you how to do it here. So here for domains, I can go to my domain for bytecrad courses, and here I can change under DNS, I can change a name server. So by default, it's of course the Hostinger domain service, but I want to copy these now and replace those. Okay, so this one as well. So now I have the Cloudflare name servers. So I can save here, and the name servers have now been changed. If I now go to Cloudflare, there's a button here for check name servers now, but it may actually take some time in my experience before this is actually updated here in Cloudflare. All right, so after about 10 or 15 minutes, it became active for me. So what actually happens now if I go to my site here? Well, I still see my app, and everything here is working. But how do we know this is actually going through Cloudflare? Well, if I refresh here and if I click on some of these, you should see in the response headers something with Cloudflare. So you can see actually this JavaScript file. It has a Cloudflare cache status of hit. So this actually came from Cloudflare's CDN. It will even show you the data center from which it came from. So this file seems to have come from Cloudflare. If you do not see these headers, it's probably not coming through Cloudflare. And another way to check it is to add this to the path here. So /cdn cgi/trace. It will give you some tracing info from Cloudflare as well. So that's another way to check. Now, if it's not working for you, what I found actually in Chrome, there may be some caching. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. You may want to open a new window or close everything and restart Chrome and try again, or clear all the data and then try again. And you also want to try in different browsers like Safari or Firefox. But for me, it seems to work. and HTTPS and everything, seems to keep working. But you have the option here to change some things about that. So by default, I believe, so I have the setting here set to full, but they will also show you the traffic they serve over that, right? So there are settings that we can specify here in Cloudflare as well. So there you go. We have Dockerized Next.js, put it on a VPS, added custom domain, HTTPS, and a CDN in front. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Let me know. So make sure to check out Hostinger's VPS with the link in the description and my coupon code BYTEGRAD, all uppercase. Then I hope this video was helpful for you. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.